Hey, what's up everybody? It's Lids, and we're back for some more Mardek, and there are just a couple more small things that I wanted to do before we head off into the SANDFLOW caves. So while we are still in Santucia, let's head back on over to this shopkeeper here, because what we will find is that Slinik, his weapon, is a great axe. So we got one of these great axes way back in Chapter 2, and we were wondering who the heck gets to use this thing, because no one could use it at the time, and it was a little bit of a hint that we were going to be getting a new party member, at least all the way in Chapter 3. So Slinik is that person. Does mean that we have an extra great axe, because he comes prepared with a great axe of his own, so we can probably sell this one here. It's not terribly valuable, but sure. And that does mean that picking up an iron axe might be significant, because it is a bit of a damage boost for him. The normal great axe, 34 base attack, which is a lot. But the iron axe goes all the way up to 38, and it's great axe made of, well, you can probably work it out somehow. And so higher damage, a better offensive reaction, and core human. I believe we were looking at that earlier, but as Slinik does not come prepared with an iron axe, seems like why not pick one up now, and ultimately we will want to swap over to this. However, we'll probably want to master that first reaction here on the normal great axe, then we'll graduate to the iron axe. That's one thing. The other thing we were talking about was, is it worth picking up another iron spear and using that either to have a couple so that Charlotte could switch on over to it, and or having one to use as a crafting component, because there's one item at the blacksmith that we could currently create. The rest looks like we'll need to go later on and pick up more items. So I think actually, these are quite cheap. I feel like we could justify taking two. The reason for that being, we'll have one to keep as the normal iron spear here, which has a couple of skills that Charlotte could learn. Donovan obviously is already equipping one. And then we take another one with the purpose of crafting it, so that we can turn it into, I believe it is, well, it's some kind of poison spear. Let's take a closer look. We were checking it out earlier as well. But I think we have enough coins at this point that why not? So it requires that we have an iron spear. We can do that. It requires that we have goblin earwax, which I'm sure somebody has that. Probably Mardek. Okay. And then a poison stinger. We should have some of those as well. And there we have our first crafted item, a sting stick. So this is something that, let's compare this damage to the Iron Spirit, is a little bit better. So ultimately we would want to have, ideally, both Charlotte and Donovan to get one of these. It does have the plus 10% damage reaction, which Donovan has already learned from either, is it the iron, or probably more likely his starting spear. Or not. I'm actually not sure where he got that from. Okay, but either way, because it has higher base damage, that's something that we'd want to put on once we've at least mastered the other skills that he can learn on the other spears. And the other thing is that it gives plus poison % chance, so that would be another reason to put it on, is to give both Charlotte and Donovan the chance to learn that. So those were a couple things that I wanted to make sure that we did. The other was, you guys were talking earlier about how there's a particular encyclopedia entry that you felt like we ought to check out, and, you know, I tend to agree. So remember, we can look at people, we can look at places, artifacts, our bestiary, or dreamstones. We looked at the dreamstones not long ago. This is one of those things, the encyclopedia, that when I was saying way back at the beginning that we probably wouldn't necessarily 100% this game, this is one of the things that I had in the back of my mind. Theoretically, there is, if I remember correctly, a challenge of sorts for fully filling out all of your bestiary and artifacts and places and people, but I'm probably not going to go out of the way to take the time to read all these unless you guys feel like there's something that is really important that we check out, and on this occasion, I think there is. So, just to give you a sense as to what we're looking at here, we have a list of all the characters that we've encountered thus far, obviously including people like Mardek, Dugan, Emla, Vern. People have been central to the plot at this point. But if we go further, we can find that there is also the Evil Chancellor. So let's read about it. A shining beacon of honor, benevolence, kindness, and reliability, this Reptoid is highly regarded by all in his community as the pinnacle of goodness. A hero. In his spare time, he likes giving to charity, making self-sacrifices, and playing with kittens and babies. Not that kittens live on Belfen, but oh well. Truly, just a stand-up Reptoid. So yeah, let me know if you guys feel like you really want to see us read more of those. Want to check all that stuff out, people, places, things of that sort. Otherwise, we'll keep on moving here. And we are into the SANDFLOW caves. And this is a relatively small area here with a couple of NPCs, so let's see what we run into. A couple of Reptoids. Hello there, chieftain, sir. How's things? Okay, things are going alright, I suppose. Wow, the chieftain! Going to sacrifice some humans out in the sacred sand caves or something? I wish I could be doing that. It sounds barbaric. And the other thing that actually that reminds me of is that we ought to check out some of Slinik's skills, because we've not yet equipped anything. So we can have the offensive plus 10% damage reaction. Sounds good. Nothing defensively at the moment. We should actually double check what, if anything, he has as a chestplate at the moment. We might be able to swap on something better. Because, yeah, nothing magic. And then Dragon's Blood costs only 1 RP to equip this. Draconic Heritage gives a 20% resistance bonus to poison, numbness, sleep, and paralysis. The perks of being Dragonborn, kinda sorta. Okay, so he is currently using... Oh, that's Mardek. Hold on. Oh, he's using a bronze armor as well, though. And that gives the morality block skill, but that's a skill that only Mardek can learn. So, yeah, I think that is likely the case, that we will not want him to be using this. We'll want to put something else on, something that can have some kind of defensive reaction so that he can start learning that. And we certainly have no shortage of options here. And so this is something that starts to become a big factor in Chapter 3. Obviously was also a factor in Chapter 2, learning those skills as we go along. However, generally speaking, because you had much of the characters from the very beginning of the chapter, you could sort of put on the items as soon as you got them and learn along the way. However, as we're picking up new characters like Slinik, who are joining us having known nothing, he's a lot of catch-up work to do. So that does likely mean that we may want to start him off with some of the very early gear. Things that give reactions like a little bit of damage soak, maybe the 10% damage reduction, wherever that might be. But I think that the breastplate and the copper breastplate, one of those probably makes a lot of sense. Let's go for, I think the percentage at this point in the game is probably a lot better than 20 flat damage. We were talking about this way back at the beginning of Chapter 2. At that stage in the game, soaking 20 damage was probably much more significant than 20% damage reduction, because enemies generally weren't hitting us for a lot of damage, so in some cases, soaking 20 meant people weren't hitting you for any damage at all. At this stage, however, we've certainly started to see some high damage enemies, and so I think that 20% damage will be important to pick that up. Then also, Slinik currently is just using a Ring of Strength, which I've said it before, not a huge fan of the attribute raising rings. He needs no helmet, so those are a few other things that we probably ought to address here. So we can put on the Kettle Hat for a little more defense. That's not bad. Then for the 2 accessories, we know he has one very RP light passive skill, but other than that, for the most part, he can throw on other things and work on those abilities, so I'm wondering what might make the most sense. Probably something that's pretty RP heavy. And Insomnia, Antibody, basically, what status would we like him to be most resistant to? Might be the question we need to ask ourselves. And I think Bright Eyes makes some sense. That's the blindness immunity one. Slinik is capable of using both physical and magical attacks, but I think for the most part, we're going to be relying most heavily, at least at this stage, on the physical one, so I think resistance to blind is going to be key. And I think poison is just generally an important thing to have, because it's pretty common. So, he can actually equip both. That is fantastic. Okay, he does have enough RP for that. And then let's make sure we also check out the defensive one that we just put on. Offensively, still working on the 10% damage on the axe. So, let's head on into the actual caves themselves. Not that little area with the guards blocking it. No, no, no. We have more ambitious places to go than that. And so we've seen many of the mantids before, of different variations. This one looks a little more intimidating than the previous ones we've seen. And it does look a little bit ant-like and maybe lion-like as well. Pretty quick, so it's actually going to go after Charla here. And 53 attack, I am pretty darn sure, is the highest attack we've seen thus far in the game, and probably by a pretty significant margin at that. So this guy is going to hit like a truck if we let him. That's going to be a bit of an issue. Let's see if we can do something about it. Lightning Bolt, probably the best way to deal damage, but it's obviously not going to be enough to take him out in and of itself, and I missed that reaction, which is obviously not a good thing. Donovan lost roughly half of his HP there. Remind me, is it better to attack this guy with physical attacks or magical attacks? Looks like probably magical, because 6 physical defense is pretty decent. Let's use a flame here. And that's not bad. That's actually not bad at all. And we actually have 3 people who will go before the Mantid here. Mardek, Slinik, and Charla. So I think that means that we will have enough time to heal up a little bit here with Mardek. Get Donovan back up to hopefully full HP. Okay, great. Now that means that Slinik, you could either go for your normal attack, or you could go for Fire Breath. We saw it briefly when he was using it against us when we initially fought him. As we were previously establishing with Donovan, it is theoretically better to use magical attacks than it is to use physical attacks against this enemy. However, I think that with Charla going after Slinik, we'll still be okay. So I actually am going to go with the physical attack so we can work on the physical reaction. Because we know that... Oh, excuse me. Wasn't Charla next on the list? Huh? Was she not next on the list? And then he went anyway? Oh, he has a... I believe that is the first time we have seen this. That is that this enemy has a reaction of its own, much like ours. Basically what happens is if we attack it with a physical attack, it will pretty much exact revenge on us. It will strike back. And so that technically wasn't its turn that we just saw there. It was its reaction to Slinik attacking it. So that only happens when you use a physical attack, I think. So for that reason, all the more reason to avoid doing that against these guys, and would be preferable to use things like Lightning Bolt. We'll do that here. But that is a good reminder / introduction to that idea, especially against an enemy that is that capable of dealing damage. It's a good thing to know. Other things to note about Slinik, I don't remember if we had done this previously, but he's actually level 16, which is considerably higher than Charla and Donovan. Not quite as high as Mardek. And high strength, highest in the group right now. He is getting +1 from, I don't remember which item that he has, but also he has 19 vitality, which actually is the highest vitality of any playable character. And so that means that, theoretically speaking, Slinik is the most capable of being a tank in Chapter 3. Now, HP is based off of both your vitality stat and your level, so at the moment it is likely that Mardek does still have more HP than him, but if they were the same level, then Slinik would have more HP, equipment being equal. Excuse me, Reptoid Warrior? Hello there, Chief. I've yet to find the suspicious character we're after, but are those humans? These human knights and I shall be looking for the intruder alone, together. Kind of an oxymoron, but okay, I get where you're going with that, Slinik. They are adventurers. They're far more powerful than all of our warriors combined. You keep saying that, it's generous, but at the same time, like, give your guys some credit. They're good too. You need to head back home. There is no good in wasting your life out here. Also, harsh. Yes, Chief. There are 3 others still in the caves. I hope you let them know the order too. Farewell, and good luck. Okay, 3 other warriors we should try to find. Send them back home. Okay. And I believe there are going to be several different directions we could go in the SANDFLOW caves here, so we're going to want to pay close attention to our map so that we don't get lost. And the blood lizards here, we've seen them many times before. Also, generally a little bit high on the attack stat, but otherwise fairly straightforward enemies that are resistant to fire. Unfortunately, 2 of our 4 characters are primarily fire damage dealing characters, so Charla probably means that we're going to be relying fairly heavily on you to deal some damage here. And these guys, ooh, they are targeting Slinick. They heard that Slinick is the tanky character. They're like, well, we'll test that theory. Okay, so then with Donovan, we could opt to go Flame. We could opt to go with a physical attack. I'm assuming that Donovan does still have a physical reaction that he's trying to learn with this new spear. He may have already learned it, though, because we gave him this spear a little while ago, so we'll do that. Oh, and I'm pretty sure we also established that the way to go with Donovan specifically is to deliberately not hit the offensive reaction so that it goes non-elemental rather than going fire, because these guys are resistant to fire. But anyways, that brings us to Mardek, and Mardek has an interesting decision here. Slinick is actually not looking very good after taking all those hits. However, Mardek is probably capable of taking out one of these blood lizards in one hit. Is that worthwhile to take one of them out, or would we rather heal Slinick? I think the answer is let's take out one of the blood lizards, because if we do that, then we should find that they're not capable of dealing as much damage this go round, so Slinick should be not in quite as much danger. And again, we could use Fire Breath, but given how these guys are resistant to fire, that probably is not our best option here. Let's test out just how much damage Slinick can do. And it's a lot. Roughly the same as Mardek. So we were talking previously about how Mardek was our highest damage character at the beginning of Chapter 3. However, Slinick might well take that crown from him. Certainly once we upgrade Slinick's weapon as well. Okay, so then we have Lightning Bolt here. Should be enough to take out this blood lizard. Just barely. And I think we also have some gear that we picked up, namely the things that we just purchased in town and crafted in town, that we should make a point of putting on, at least if we find that people are done with their reactions. Like Donovan, okay, it was just removed numbness, so he's actually all set on this one, which means probably makes sense to go straight to the Sting Stick with him. And Charla, I think, is also done with her Wing Spear. Let's verify that. I mean, that was her initial weapon, so surely, right? Yeah, okay. So let's put the Iron Spear on her, and that means that Charla will actually be looking at active skills that she needs to master. And for Donovan, oh, we were looking earlier at that 10% offensive reaction and wondering where exactly Charla and Donovan were getting that from, because it looked like they had mastered it. However, I think what was happening was we were actually technically hovering over Mardek when we were looking at it, and so Mardek has mastered it. However, Donovan and Charla have not. So that means that Donovan has plenty of stuff here to work on, and fortunately does have the MP to make it happen. As for other things, oh, you should have that equipped. And can't quite manage that one. As for Charla, let's double check here as well. Ooh, also done that. Might have done a little bit of gear swapping around and not remembered to re-equip our stuff. Slinick, I'm assuming you're probably good at this stage. Mardek, however, we were also noting that as great as the Champion Sword was for as long as it was, it probably does still make sense for us to swap on over to the Xanthusian Scimitar, because 20% crit sounds pretty awesome, and it is actually slightly higher damage, 33 versus 32. Same crit chance, 10 versus 10. And it's not light elemental, but that, at the moment at least, shouldn't be terribly relevant. And +1 strength means it's given a little more damage in that way as well. Let's make sure that Mardek is working on that offensive reaction as well, because I think we're going to find we have our fair share of enemies that we're going to be running through here. So is it worth it to swap 30% damage for 20% crit? Good question. Short term, certainly to master the skill, I would say absolutely. Long term, I actually don't remember. Is crit technically double damage? I want to say it is. In which case, what, it's 20% chance of dealing double damage? Is that still better than 30% damage? Well, hopefully, long term we'll find that Mardek gets enough RP that we don't have to choose. We can use both. And maybe it means we're sacrificing 10% damage or 20% damage. We need to free up a little bit more space, or maybe Quarry Undead, if we anticipate that we're not going to have many undead enemies to fight. But giving ourselves options is, of course, very nice to do. Okay, so here we find this is another one of those switches. So we're going to find a fair number of those in Chapter 3. We saw some of them in the Sun Temple. None of them in Chapter 2. They did not exist. But they're going to become, I don't want to say commonplace, but just much more common than they were before. Okay, so there's only 2 Blood Lizards here. We probably should have healed in between battles, because Slinik and Charla still not looking great here. I would have said this might be an opportunity to use things like Null Air once, and maybe remove Paralysis, because these guys might not be terribly threatening. We could potentially try to take out one of them, and then see, after that, if we're feeling comfortable enough to make those commitments to mastering those other skills that don't directly damage these guys, and things of that sort. They will still get their turn to attack. Now, Donovan, we are looking for you to use offensive reactions on this occasion, because that's what you get with this new weapon. So it does mean we are technically going to reduce your damage, but in the name of becoming smarter and mastering your skills, let's make it happen. And we did use Charlotte to heal, so that means that Mardek, you probably should go offensive here, and you have an offensive reaction of your own to learn. Same with Slinik, and as tempting as this is, I think, like I was saying earlier, this is a bit of an opportunity here. Let's use Fire Breath, because I don't anticipate that this will take this Blood Lizard out. Give you a chance to see what this looks like. Like I was saying, we did see it previously when Slinik was using it against us, but it is a cool skill, of course. So, now that we have only one enemy remaining, it means that it's probably a safer time for us to do things like remove Paralysis at least, which only takes 5 turns to master. So that might be easy enough for us to make happen. And Donovan, again, we're not really expecting you to deal much damage, so I think you're also safe to attack. Mardek, probably not. And so on this occasion, let's use you to heal Donovan. Keep him safe. Technically speaking, Slinik, we don't really need you to be using Fire Breath. You are getting a little bit of experience when you do it, but it's not like you have any magical reactions at the moment, so from that standpoint, it's not doing anything for us. So I'm actually going to pass with you, so that way we can get as many turns of primarily Donovan getting those attacks in, or we actually take out this Blood Lizard, because eventually he will still run out of HP. And the Blood Lizard is like, well, Slinik, I can one-up you. I can deal a little bit more damage with my ability. And there you see, the offensive reaction, doing some work there, does apply the poison. Are there any other things? Oh, there actually are other things on Mardek that we should be doing. Things like mastering regen, we could do that. We could put it on Slinik, he's not on full HP. So let's make that happen. I believe we also need one more morality block to master that. So those are a couple things, for sure, that we want Mardek to finish up. Give him a little more flexibility on some of his gear. I know the morality block is coming from his chest plate. We could swap that over once we get that done. Technically, we should be using that skill on Mardek. It'll give us a little bit more HP when that happens. Or I should say, XP. Not that that's a huge difference, but if we can, then we should, right? Ooh, I missed that reaction, and that actually meant that we dealt more damage than we would have otherwise dealt, so this Blood Lizard will likely become deceased on its next turn because of that poison damage. Here's Morality Block, so Mardek will have just enough time to make that happen. Again, technically would be best, I suppose, to use it on himself in that instance. Slinik, sorry, buddy. I suppose we could have had you attack because, like I said, this Blood Lizard is going to die to the poison either way. So, not like we gain much from deliberately passing on Slinik. Okay, I remembered. Do it on Mardek that time. Charla, one turn away from being able to master remove paralysis. And there you see, as anticipated, Blood Lizard down. And Mardek mastering 2 abilities there as well. So that means that we can take off the bronze armor if we'd like. Which I do think we want to do because I think that Mardek was working on the resist water on the trilobite armor. Let's double check. He had one use with the trilobite armor, but I think that is probably still next highest priority. So let's switch on over there. Oh, and we didn't really put anything on in its place. We just had a bunch of unused RP, which is not a great thing to have. Okay, and then we could actually, if we wanted to, swap off something like remove agility for maybe something that either gives him more HP, MP, or some kind of status resistance. Don't have a strong preference here. Maybe the HP. As I was saying before, I anticipate that we'll have our fair share of enemies to fight here. And let's actually look at our map again. So we looked in the bottom corner there, and we did unlock that switch, or flip that switch. That's what this signal here means. So it looks like we have a couple of directions we can go near the top. And here is an example of, I actually don't think we've seen this before, but this is what the gate looks like, the obstacle, when you have not yet flipped one of those switches. So this means that there should be a red switch somewhere in here that when we do switch it, this will go down and we can head on through that area. However, obviously we can't do that just yet. So we'll check up here maybe. Oh, and honestly, that was an accident. However, you will see that this is a hidden area. So we'll see what we find down here. I don't remember. But let's check it out. Which direction are we technically supposed to go here? Oh, that is a dead end. It's actually, oh, it's a little trap. Not supposed to go this way. It's supposed to go down. And we can still find enemies in here. Now we have a bunch of Lupazers. These guys are very weak to lightning. So I think for that reason, although previously we were trying to make a point of mastering some skills with Charlotte, on this occasion, let's just deal some damage. Oh, and I was caught sleeping on that one. I did not realize these guys were going next. So I missed that first reaction. These guys can also breathe fire. That one I just should have had. Plain and simple. So, Donovan, these guys are all on pretty low HP. So I think you should be able to take any of them out. Let's use your physical attack. Continue to work on mastering that. And you see that it did actually have the canceling out of the poison effect indication there. That means that, technically speaking, Donovan would have successfully inflicted the poison there. However, because he also took down the enemy, it removed the poison as soon as it applied it. So, Mardek, you are now done with all these abilities. You have an offensive reaction to work on, but do you need to heal anyone desperately? You're not looking great. I think let's take a second here to get you back up close to full HP. And then, Slinik, I think you can also attack yourself. Work on your reaction. And Charla, you could take out the Lupus. Yeah, let's take out the enemy here. It's gonna say, again, with only one enemy remaining, another instance where not terribly threatening to fight just one of these guys at a time. So, could have been reason to deliberately take some time to work on mastering some of Charlotte's abilities there, but I think more of those opportunities will present themselves, and it looks like down is technically the way we're supposed to go to make it through here. Okay, and we've not seen any of these guys yet. Happy Johnny. Fairly low attack compared to some of the enemies that we fought previously in this area. Very high magical defense. However, 70% evasion chance. So these guys are almost impossible to hit with physical attacks. So you'll see that becomes quite a factor quite soon. We'll try to hit him here. And I believe, if I remember correctly, this may be Path of Exile, mixing up my brain a little bit here. But I believe that evasion technically only works against physical attacks. So spells will always hit them. But as we saw, these guys have lots of magical defense, so even if you are hitting with the spells, it's not going to do too much. But it's that even if you're dealing full damage with the physical attacks, you're hitting so infrequently, it's not going to be easy to take these guys out. And we saw some nasty attacks there. Used an attack that dealt a fair share of damage and also poisoned Donovan. So suddenly, our team is looking a little worse for wear at the moment. And Donovan, if you hit, you could likely take out this Happy Johnny here. As for whether or not you will, remains to be seen, you will not. And for Mardek, I think we don't have much choice here. We definitely do need to heal. Actually, not that much, surprisingly. And this might be an instance where it could be worth taking this opportunity to use Fire Breath on Slinik. Again, to avoid having to rely too heavily on physical attacks. Plenty of damage, no problem there. And Charla, again, one enemy left. Could make a case for using something like Null Air once, or remove Paralysis. It's tempting, but I think these guys are probably a little more dangerous than the other enemies we were fighting previously. So this is not the best scenario. Work on those, I don't think. But they are down. And if we can figure out how we're technically supposed to navigate through here, Donovan is still poisoned, I'm realizing. So let's take a second here to get rid of that. No problem. Mardek's actually running a little low on MP because we're doing a lot of that healing and stuff with him. Okay, so we're into this secret area of sorts. I don't remember what we find here. Theoretically possible one of these could be a battle. Seems like the type of thing where that might be the case. Blood Opal, a common but powerful gemstone that's said to be the crystallized blood of a warrior of some ancient race, slain in some horrendous bloody battle in the distant past. So, let's take a look at that. It gives 1 defense, it's a gemstone, so it fits in the miscellaneous category, the accessory. It gives the Drain HP, offensive reaction. So this is actually amazingly good. Basically means that when you are attacking with a physical attack, you leech 10% of the damage that you deal. So, assuming that you are capable of dealing your fair share of damage, this can become a very reliable way of maybe not doing major heals, but at least keeping yourself in a good position where if you find, for example, that you're in a situation similar to what Donovan is in right now, where he's not desperate for a heal, but could use a little bit more to get himself up to the maximum amount. You know, it's kind of in that area where you'd say, not really sure if I want to dedicate a turn just to healing him, then getting 10% leech is fantastic. Now, Donovan is not the strongest of physical attackers. It is, of course, most effective on people like Slinik and Mardek and other really strong physical attackers. And for that reason, I'm wondering, might we be able to make some room on someone like Slinik or Mardek for such an item? Or even, yeah, Mardek is using the green beads, which are actually not teaching him anything right now. And we did just learn the regen ability on the Moonstone, so that's no longer necessary for us to equip that. So Mardek does have his fair share of flexibility here. I'm wondering what else he's not yet learned, because of course we've had Mardek the longest by far, so he's had the most time to master some of these abilities. And might it finally be time to work on the Fire Pendant? There are a lot of fire-breathing enemies here, so you know, that might not be a bad idea. And he's getting close-ish to mastering it, so sure. And if we are putting the Drain HP on him, it is 4 RP, which is a bit tough to make that work. I think it probably makes the most sense to unequip Quarry Undead, because not fighting too many undead here, and 10% damage. Again, is that necessarily the best option short term? Maybe not. Obviously, we're reducing at least a little bit of Mardek's damage by unequipping 10% damage here. But it would be very nice to at least have this option to leech some HP. And then second one, Phoenix Downs. Just one of them, but also quite powerful, so not bad. So let's head on back. If I can happen to work my way through here, just by guessing and not referring directly to the map. The easiest way, of course, to go through that area would be to refer to the map and see exactly which areas the hidden pathway is on. Okay, so this is actually a pretty scary fight here, because we were fighting the antlion before by itself. Now we have some Lupizars along with it. So I think antlion is priority number 1, because it will definitely deal far and away the most damage, so we want to get rid of this guy soon. Whereas the Lupizars, not terribly concerned about them. So, I think that means we Lightning Bolt the antlion, which does a fair amount of damage, but obviously not enough to take it out. Now, if you start attacking Donovan, we might be in trouble. However, he has enough fire resistance that if you use a Fire Breath ability and we hit our defensive reaction, because he has a 50% fire resistance magic defensive reaction, which is what Mardek has been working on for so long, or at least was working on for so long, that we never mastered. That puts him at 80 plus 50, so 130. He does heal a bit, so he actually helped us out there. So, as for what we want to do next, remind me, antlion is best to use magic attacks, and he will actually react to us if we use physical attacks. So, I think for that reason, we definitely want to go the flame route. Donovan gets the antlion pretty low. Now, I don't remember if on a physical attack that takes the enemy out, can it somehow still manage to get in a reaction attack? I'm assuming not. I'm pretty sure that once it reaches 0 HP, it's just truly gone. But let's verify. Could also, of course, use this turn to heal up, because Mardek is certainly one of our better healers. Oh, it's not enough to take it out, so it does get the reaction in. Could have anticipated that much, of course. And, well, I suppose we could still test that theory here, assuming that Slinik can do the honors. That he can. And we can now confirm, if you take out the enemy, it does not have that reaction. So then, Sharla, is it worth taking a turn here to heal up Donovan? I suppose it probably is. I think we can be a little bit more patient now that we don't have to worry about the antlion dealing tons of damage to us on its turn. And that was enough for Charlotte to level up as well, so that's good to see. Donovan, we do want to continue to use the physical attacks with the reactions, so that we can learn that stuff. And similar story with Mardek. Let's actually take this guy out. And then this is the scenario we talked about many times before. Maybe we'll take this opportunity to use a little bit of Charlotte's skills. At least we'll test out the Fire Breath, see exactly how much damage that does. If it doesn't take this guy out, then Charlotte will have the opportunity to master something here. It's not enough to take this guy out. So Charlotte, I think you were just one away, from mastering Remove Paralysis, so let's use that. So that way we can check that one off. I do think your other ability there, the Null Air Once, was also from the sphere, so we're not done with that just yet. But we also don't have a replacement sphere, because we don't have 2 of these Sting Sticks yet. Even if ultimately that would be preferable to put that on Charla as well. So, let's take out the Lupizar here, or at least attack it, and then Mardek. Hopefully we'll take it out. And there's the crits. The higher crit chance, or at least same crit chance as he had on the Champion Sword, which was higher than most other weapons' crit chance, and the, most notably, critical offensive reaction, would mean that we're expecting to get more crits on Mardek, right? There's Remove Paralysis. So that's good to see, and I think this is probably a good place for us to wrap up here, because we got a long way to go through here. There are a lot of different areas, I think, that we will find that we are able to connect to. Of course, one of these was blocked off, but we might be able to find our way through up there, there. We'll have to check it out. So with that, I will catch you all next time. We'll see what else we can come across in the SANDFLOW Caves.